Did I ever tell you what the definition of insanity is? Insanity is doing the exact same fucking thing over and over again, expecting shit to change.
They say the greatest learnings happen through failure, but seemingly that doesn't apply to everyone, such as Warner Brothers, an entity that continues to make the same mistake over and over and over and over again and continue to fail as a result of their inability to learn from past mistakes. So, as many of you know, Warner Brothers has released a number of live service titles that have gone on to flop completely and utterly. These are high-profile AAA game releases of very high-profile IPs that, by all metrics, should have been a massive success, but where Warner Brothers completely fumbled was in the types of games that they made for the IPs. The genre of live service and looter shooters and all these things just didn't quite suit the IPs that they try to convert into, money-milking machines. And yet, Warner Brothers continues to double down on this tactic in the hope that they can make their next, billion-dollar live service that they can recurrently monetize. As noticed by social media platforms like Batman Arkham Videos here on Twitter, who posted the following: Warner Brothers Games Montreal is making a AAA live service game based on an iconic DC property, per a job listing mentioning post-launch monetization and ongoing content. Built on Unreal Engine 5 for console and PC, likely not Batman, but something within the DC universe. And you can find the job listing right here on Warner Brothers Games Montreal's official website. They're looking for an executive producer, and the job description here reads as follows: as an executive producer, you will lead the development of a high-quality AAA game based on one of the iconic IPs from the vast Warner Brothers and DC Comics catalog. You will oversee the entire production lifecycle from concept to launch and beyond, ensuring the game meets the highest standards of quality, innovation, and player engagement. You will work closely with the creative director and studio leadership to align creative vision with production realities, manage cross-functional teams, and ensure the project delivers on time, on budget, and to critical and commercial success. Good luck with that one, with the kind of tactic you're going for here. And scrolling further down, you'll find more references to how this is very much a live service and how you have to handle post-launch live service operations, oversee post-launch content and live service strategy, ensuring ongoing player engagement, so on and so forth. Now, in many ways, this should come as no surprise, as Warner Brothers has expressed in the past that they intend to double down on live services. Back in March of 2024, Warner Brothers essentially expressed that they want to move away from AAA game releases and focus more on live service, stating the following: we're doubling down on games as an area where we think there's a lot more growth opportunity that we can tap into with the IP that we have and some of the capabilities we have on the studio, where we're uniquely positioned as both a publisher and a developer of games. Rather than just launching a one-and-one console game, how do we develop a game around, for example, a Hogwarts Legacy or Harry Potter that is a live service where people can live and work and build and play in that world in an ongoing basis? Now, the irony of bringing up Hogwarts Legacy and trying to convert that into a live service is that Hogwarts Legacy, the single-player, campaign-driven experience, was Warner Brothers' most successful game ever. And the reason it was as successful as it was is because it was a perfect marriage of the world, the universe that it took place in, and the kind of genre that they went for, which was a single-player action-adventure experience. And while the game didn't break new grounds, it was executed on well enough where people felt like they could immerse themselves into the world of Harry Potter. So the fact that they're saying that they want to move away from AAA game releases like Hogwarts Legacy and do more live services, when live service is the area where Warner Brothers has been flopping consistently, it just takes utter moronic logic to think that way. They're literally saying, let's move away from the things that made Hogwarts Legacy the most commercially successful product we've ever released and lean into the stuff that has culminated in the worst commercial flops we've ever released. And that's because Warner Brothers is desperate to get a piece of the live service pie, where when you do succeed in the live service space, you get this recurrent source of monetization that can generate billions. But there's this bad habit that game companies have in believing that they can consistently take blind shots and somehow break through in that arena, when it's an arena that's so oversaturated that the possibilities of that endeavor being successful are extremely low, and you have to stand out in some way. And that's where Warner Brothers has been failing. Their live services have been generic and have not been standing out in any way, shape, or form, and have not been executed in a way that makes people want to break away from the live services that they currently play. Now, speaking of bad habits, that brings us to the sponsor of today's video, Fume, a company dedicated to helping people transition out of and replace habits like vaping and similar activities with a harmless alternative. This is an innovative, award-winning device that imitates the motions and actions of bad habits akin to a placebo while taking out all of the bad elements, such as the inhalation of unhealthy chemicals, instead offering delicious, naturally flavored scents. There are no vapors or electronics involved here. This is not an e-cig, vape, or nicotine device. Just breathe in natural air that passes through the flavored cores made from plant compounds and taste something refreshing while performing actions that will scratch the itch of the hand-to-mouth fixation. There are plenty of flavors to choose from to suit your preferences. Most recently, I tried out this cranberry flavor, which offered a more subtle scent with just the right amount of fruitiness that made for a really pleasant experience. There was no coughing or irritation, just natural air that was scented with a really good taste. The device itself has a nice weighted premium feel to it with its combination of high quality wood and metal, with components held together by magnets, and the metal part itself rotates to adjust the amount of airflow, which is also a great way for fidgeters to keep their fingers busy. Switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable, and even fun, which is why over 500,000 customers have made the change with tons of success stories, with even doctors having backed the device. If breaking away from destructive habits is a priority, you can pick up the Journey Pack today by heading to tryfume.com/yongyeah or scanning the QR code and using the code YONGYEAH. If you use my link and code, you get the topper accessories, which help soften and protect the tip of the device for free. Anyway, back to the topic of today's video. Let's talk about Warner Brothers live service failure so we can really paint a picture of what Warner Brothers is doing here by doubling down on live services, moving away from projects like Hogwarts Legacy or, those kinds of single-player action adventure experiences and trying to convert those kinds of successful releases into live service flops alongside developing new live services that have every potential to flop epically and cost Warner Brothers even more than their existing live service endeavors have. Many of you know that their biggest high-profile flop is none other than Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. This is a game that swung big, not only featuring the Suicide Squad and major characters like the Joker, but also featuring the entirety of the Justice League. I mean, it had some of the most iconic and recognizable characters and properties within it, and yet, because the quality of the live service experience didn't live up or didn't stand out from the rest of the pack, its player base ended up nosediving very quickly after launch, and it ultimately never recovered. The end result was that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was shut down, and it left a huge financial hole for Warner Brothers, as reported here back in June of 2024, when it was reported that Suicide Squad left a $200 million hole in Warner Brothers Discovery's game division. So it should come as no surprise that only a year after launch, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was shut down after, I believe it was season 4. But I mean, they even had villains like the Joker as playable characters, and that wasn't enough to spruce up the player base of this very substandard, very generic live service experience that does not befit the kind of the bar-setting games that Rocksteady released in the past in the form of the Arkham trilogy. And what's frustrating is that when commenting about the failure of Suicide Squad versus the success of something like Hogwarts Legacy, Warner Brothers executives still continue to lose the plot. Right here we have a PC Gamer report from March 5th, 2024, talking about what Warner Brothers said about these two games, and they said this: "Our business historically has been very AAA console-based. That's a great business when you have a hit like Harry Potter. It makes the year look amazing. And then when you don't have a release, or unfortunately we also have disappointments, we just released Suicide Squad this quarter, which is not as strong. It just makes it very volatile." They're saying that Hogwarts Legacy and Suicide Squad are in the same category of AAA console-based games, except one is a live service, the flop that was Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and the other is a single-player, campaign-driven action-adventure game, the commercially successful Harry Potter game, Hogwarts Legacy, which again is Warner Brothers Games' most successful release to date. What's volatile is the live service sector. I can almost guarantee that if Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League were built as a single-player game, it could have been an incredibly successful product. And I'd also bet money that if Hogwarts Legacy had released as a generic looter-shooter live service that doesn't stand out, that ultimately had the same quality as Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, that game wouldn't have succeeded to the level that it did. You know what isn't volatile? Taking your most recognized IPs and making kick-ass single-player campaign-driven experiences, or, turning them into games whose genre are befitting of that IP instead of trying to force a genre like looter shooter or just some kind of live service genre into an IP and a game experience where it just doesn't match, and you're just forcing a match because you like the idea of a live service recurrently monetizing players. And what also pisses me off about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League and how much money that lost for Warner Brothers Games is that the projects that suffered were the single-player action-adventure experiences. So, for example, Monolith Studios was shut down shortly after Suicide Squad's flop, with the Wonder Woman game that they were developing having been canceled alongside the shutdown of that studio. Now, according to reports from Bloomberg, Wonder Woman was sort of troubled in its development, but it was also coming along, and there's also elements of how Monolith was working on a project that Warner Brothers was like, no, we don't want that project because we want you to work on, what we want you to work on. And all of these things that compounded and ultimately led to what was essentially Warner Brothers setting Monolith up for failure. And Monolith being one of the most beloved game studios that has gone on to release some of the most beloved titles like the Fear series and the Middle-earth series, them being the progenitors of systems like the Nemesis system that Warner Brothers has, trademarked, and so other developers and studios can't use that system. Them getting shut down because of a live service flop, instead of Warner Brothers focusing on those kinds of studios that can make them successes like Hogwarts Legacy, those kinds of single-player experiences, highlights where their priorities are and how misguided their priorities are. And Suicide Squad is not the only high-profile live service flop that Warner Brothers has under their belt. There's also Gotham Knights, which you can see right here has the same pattern as Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, where it had a decent all-time peak starting out, though nothing to write home about, and then the player base just nosedived and it never recovered. And the irony there is that Gotham Knights was developed by none other than Warner Brothers Games Montreal, the same division within Warner Brothers that has recently announced that they're making a AAA live service game, and that is announcing that they need an executive producer to help see this high-quality AAA live service game through from development all the way to launch and beyond. So they've already failed with Gotham Knights, and their next endeavor, instead of playing to their strengths and making a kick-ass single-player game experience, is to double down on another live service. Again, the utter idiocy of Warner Brothers game strategies just confounds me. And let's not forget the flop that was Multiverses, the Super Smash Brothers-like that took essentially characters from all of Warner Brothers' major IPs, put them all together in one game, and still ultimately managed to fail. You can see right here the pattern of it having great all-time peak concurrent players, but that nosediving very quickly. And then the re-release of the game back in May of 2024 also saw a significant influx of players, but that quickly flopped in player base and player numbers because the game didn't live up quality-wise, and not to mention that the official launch of the game somehow was worse than the beta, and the game just, in its monetization, its progression systems, and the gameplay loop, it just didn't ultimately end up being at a level of quality that made it something people want to come back to. And this was a free-to-play game at that. The fact that the game flopped as hard as it did as a free-to-play game that people could access without paying any initial money goes to highlight that, having these iconic IPs isn't enough. The game you build around those IPs have to be excellent. They have to be standouts. They have to be pushing boundaries, which is what Warner Brothers used to do with some of their major game releases, but leading into this live service trend, they've fallen into the same traps as other major AAA game publishers and studios have. And the end result is that they just keep losing money. Multiverses cost them an extra $100 million. Combine that with the flop that was Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, we're looking at a total write-down year-to-date of over $300 million. This was a report from back in November of 2024. And that's what they're risking by trying to aim for another live service from a studio that already tried to make a live service, Warner Brothers Montreal, who made Gotham Knights. Now, that's not to say that Warner Brothers isn't working on any AAA single-player experiences. So, for example, Bloomberg reported that Rocksteady is looking to return to Batman for a single-player game after the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League flop. So they are playing to their strengths with their next game release. But who's to say that, Warner Brothers doesn't launch another live service flop, and then they'll have to engage in cost-cutting measures, and the ones that will go will be, single-player projects or single-player studios like this Batman game or Rocksteady Studios, in the same way that Monolith was shut down, and that was deprioritized over additional live service endeavors. While I think it's great that Rocksteady is going back to their roots and working on a brand new AAA single-player Batman game, I fear for this studio's fate, given Warner Brothers' priorities, given them having stated that they want to lean away from Hogwarts Legacy-type releases, despite that being their most successful endeavor, and engaging more with live service releases akin to those that have been major flops for the company. I mean, where the volatility is really in Warner Brothers' leadership and not in the AAA games in the single-player game release sector, because those have proven that if you make something really good that stands out, those will succeed. I mean, you look at something like Clair Obscur Expedition 33. That is a first-time release for a brand new indie studio that decided to shoot for the fences and push the boundaries of JRPG. They play their cards right, they play to their strengths, and they made a game experience that was ultimately special and wasn't trend chasing. They just made something that they believed in. They had a strong vision for something that was just of high quality, executed properly, and that stood out from the pack. If Warner Brothers got back to those roots, then their game releases really wouldn't be all that volatile. They would have some consistent successes if they executed on experiences that players look forward to on a consistent level. But for some reason, this basic premise is something that utterly eludes Warner Brothers executives, because their ultimate goal is to make money, which ultimately blinds them when it comes to the methodologies that would lead to those kinds of financial successes. Their pursuit for money leads them to decisions that ultimately result in $300 million holes. But with all said and done, only time will tell how Warner Brothers Games Montreal's new live service game will perform, how well development will go, and what it ultimately will end up being. But given Warner Brothers' track record, I don't foresee this new live service game being anything special, and I don't foresee it being a major financial success, or at the very least, I foresee this being a huge financial risk, a gamble where the cards and the odds are woefully stacked against you versus, pursuing those kinds of game experiences like Hogwarts Legacy, like the Arkham trilogy that players have consistently gravitated towards. But that's just one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on Warner Brothers Games pursuing yet another live service, another DC Comics live service at that, which again historically have proven to fail and flop hard under Warner Brothers Games watch. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.